My name's Alex, but you can just call me Chuck. I'm one of the youth leaders for Gould Uniting Church, and I love seeing the youth grow in who their knowledge of God is. Most of our youth don't actually know who Jesus is. I work part-time on a vegetable farm called Pittsford Produce, and I look after me and another guy look after the nursery growing the seeds. Currently I'm studying to be a youth pastor at the Adelaide College of Divinity, also known as Uniting College for Leadership and Theology. And I've loved every minute of my studies. Not only am I growing in my knowledge about leadership, but the Bible, and especially the New Testament. I also volunteer in the Gould Country Fire Service, which not last Saturday, but the Saturday before. I found that I've been volunteering for exactly 10 years. Today, I'll be speaking from Galatians chapter 5. How do I define freedom? For me, freedom was a time where I had to let go of pain that had hit me really hard. I had this anger towards another person because of the harmful things and lies said about me. And the truth is, it destroyed my self-confidence. Just a slight reminder of this person, and it used to make my blood boil. I had to let go of this pain. I was a slave to anger. It took me 3 years to let go and forgive this person. And once I did, I was free. As free as a bird, as I would describe it. After this, I felt free to love one another and to let go of anger once someone had upset me. Have you ever held on to hurt? Have you ever allowed something to bubble inside of you rather than dealing with the issue? How long did it take you to let go of that hurt and forgive someone, or forgive a situation, or maybe even forgive God? We sometimes hold on to hurt because we think that we have the right to hold on to it. Sometimes we hold on to hurt because we don't know how to let go. We hold on to hurt because it has become so natural to hold on to hurt that it almost feels like an old friend who is always with us. The problem is that holding on to hurt weighs us down. As it gets heavier, it starts to affect all areas of our lives. It can affect our relationships and the ways that we speak to other people, and even how we think about others. It can affect our health, and we can become sick, either mentally, physically, or even both. It can affect our attitudes on life, and we can start to think that people owe us, or that even God owes us. We can become bitter and lose the joy in life. We can even start living by our own set of rules and law. We are never forced to hold on to hurt. It is our choice whether we hold on to it or not, or whether to choose to forgive. Chapter 5 begins with Paul telling the Galatians, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to the yoke of slavery." God has given us the freedom to choose. Freedom is explained as the ability to make one's choice between different possibilities and to decide for oneself how to act or what attitude to adopt to any given situation. Paul writes to Galatians in Galatians 5:13 to 15, "For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulge, but through love become slaves to one another. For the whole law is summed up in one single commandment. You shall love your neighbour as you love yourself. If, however, you bite and devour one another, take care that you are not consumed by one another." Paul explains what freedom of Christ is. Freedom is a choice, and you can choose your freedom to sin, or in the case of the Galatians, listened to false teachings and returned to the slavery of the law. Or you can choose your freedom to choose to serve your neighbour. The Galatians were using their freedom as in a selfish manner instead of the way that Jesus had intended it for us to serve one another. The Judeans were given false teachings to the Galatian people, saying that they must live under the old law. In verse 13, Paul states, "We are called to freedom. We have been saved by God's grace, and through God's grace we have been given freedom. Our freedom is given to us through Jesus. Although we might be tempted to use our freedom to indulge in our own wants and desires, this is not what God has planned for our freedom. This is what the world wants you to think. You have freedom, you deserve freedom, so use your freedom to love whatever you want. Often people say they can do whatever they want because it's not hurting anyone else. Have you ever heard someone say that? Maybe you've even thought that for yourself. That is because the world wants you to put yourself first. The world wants you to use your freedom to be self-centered, self-righteous, and self-absorbed. That is not the freedom that God has intended for us. Freedom is a gift that God has given us to serve Him and to serve others. Verse 14, part B. Paul says our freedom is an opportunity to love your neighbour as yourself. On December of 2015, we had a call out for a grass fire on Mosquito Hill Road, Mount Compass. We got no further than the primary schools in Goolwa when we could see the plume of smoke and had confirmation that there was a home under threat. When we got to the home, there were spot fires everywhere. The smoke was so thick we couldn't breathe. And when we were in clean air, there was no difference because of the fire was sucking up all the air. I felt like giving up and collapsing. The heat from the fire front was excruciating, but we managed to save the home. But knowing that the work we did for this family was of God. Now, when I think back, it makes me feel blessed that I was able to help my neighbour. God blessed me by keeping me safe, as well as my crew. One question I get asked from non-Christian on occasion, is there anything we must do to be a Christian? Because my understanding is there are so many rules involved. Or, I've done too many bad things in my life to go to heaven. And I love my life, and I don't need that. People who don't know Jesus see the church as something that they must do. People don't know They don't understand that being a follower of Jesus isn't about doing things or keeping people happy. Being a Christian means we are free to love, free to serve one another, and free to worship God. We are free to choose to live like Jesus. We are free from the law because of God's grace. Grace that comes from God. God's grace sent Jesus to earth to die for us so we could live, so we can know life and freedom. Grace means we don't have to die in our own sins, but that Jesus took our sin upon himself to the grave. Grace means that God has raised Jesus from the dead so that we can spend eternity with our Heavenly Father. We know this, but there are so many people outside those doors that don't know this. Once you live by faith, you are living by the Spirit, which means we are no longer live by the law, but to live in the Spirit, and that you don't put yourself first. and you don't listen to what the world is telling you about freedom. Paul says, "Live by the Spirit, I say, and do not gratify the desires of the flesh. For what the flesh desires is opposite to the Spirit, and what the Spirit desires is opposite to the flesh. For these are opposite to each other, to prevent you from doing what you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not subject to the law. Now the works of the flesh are obvious: fornication, impurity, idolatry, sorcery, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrel, factions, envy, drunkenness, and cursing. And things like these I am warning you, as I warned you before. Those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. When you have received the Spirit and live a life of freedom in the Spirit, then the fruits of the Spirit will be expressed in your life as you serve others." Paul says about the fruits of the Spirit, by contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There are no laws against such things. How have you seen the fruits of the Spirit expressed when you have used your freedom to serve someone else? Some examples that I can give of the fruits of the Spirit is in the actions that I do within my week. Showing love to the youth that don't know Jesus and getting to know them relationally. I find joy when I am teaching, whether it be at work, at CFS teaching the newbies how to be firefighters like myself, or preaching to you and sharing about Jesus. Peace of God in the chaos we sometimes experience at youth. Just praying for peace goes a long way. Patience, like I am right now, awaiting the score for my final assignment for the year. That impatience and wondering if I've done well or not. Kindness is doing something good for someone who is in need. Goodness is helping others in the time of need and not without expecting anything in return. Staying faithful to God and family and friends, always telling the truth and being loyal. Gentleness is not being arrogant and listening to others' opinions and coming up with a reasonable solution to any given situation. And the last one is self-control. I'm glad it's last because it's actually one that I struggle with. You're probably thinking that it's not possible for me to struggle with self-control, but if I'm stressed, tired, and the wrong thing is said to me on the wrong day, I will flip my lid. Just go and ask my dad. We choose freedom and live by the Spirit. We are focused on God. We take our eye off the world and we choose to serve our neighbour so they may experience the love of God for themselves. We choose to sacrifice our own comforts so others can experience the freedom through Jesus. And those who belong to Jesus Christ have crucified with the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us be guided by the Spirit. Let us not become concerned, competing against one another, envying one another. Instead of holding on to hurt that we receive from someone, we have the freedom to let go of that hurt, to not become concerned or think that we are better than that person, not to try and compete with them or to envy them, but to actually serve that person with grace in love, so they may also experience the freedom through Jesus. What God has done is given us the freedom to love each other. Free to do the things that imitate the freedom of Jesus Christ, because our hearts are no longer empty. Because of Jesus has filled the emptiness in our hearts, God fills the emptiness of our hearts with his love, kindness, gentleness, not just for us, but for us to then serve those around us, including our enemies. Thank you.